So, one of the things that I hear from people on breakthrough calls is that they're not sure they can find the time to really commit to doing a centering spiritual practice every single day. And I get it, it makes sense. If you're in this group and you're watching, you're probably a super busy, kind of stressed out, overwhelmed, perhaps professional in a different field. And you're probably trying to balance career with personal relationships and family, and maybe trying to have some semblance of a normal life, or do hobbies, or just take some time away from to be down and have some off time. Now, maybe you've watched some of my videos here before on this playlist or in our group, or maybe you've even watched my free masterclass. And I've got a link for it up in the chat box here as well for that. But maybe you've kind of been following this, and you're like, some of this makes sense, but you haven't booked a call because you're kind of like in the back of your head, like, yeah, that sounds good, Tom, but that could never work for me. I have, I work 14 hours a day, and I've got 6 kids, and I coach little league and all these other things that you've got going on. And it's very common. If that's you, that's a very normal reaction when you think about, what the kind of commitment that it might take to get into a daily spiritual practice. But here's what I found, and I found this over and over again with clients that I've worked with, is that when you kind of declare it, and you'll kind of know when you're ready. When I talk to people on calls, it's part of why I call it a breakthrough session, is because we get this sense, we get a lot of clarity on kind of where you are and what your challenges are and where you want to be. And you'll kind of know that when you're ready to declare it and really learn a practice and get it integrated into your daily life, when you do that and you tell God or a higher power, you commit to yourself and to the universe, maybe to me as a coach or to other members of our group, that you're really serious about living your entire life aligned from a place of being spiritually connected, having a clearly identified purpose, or I call it sometimes your true north or your root why. Again, if you've watched my masterclass, you'll know those terms. And feeling much more centered and just aligned. You will be amazed at how much more time you will find in your day. Now, I know it sounds maybe a little crazy, a little counterintuitive, and maybe again you're like, Tom, what are you talking about here? But it is true, and I've seen it for myself, and I've seen it for everybody I've worked with. So let me give you a couple of examples. Just earlier this week, I was actually talking with a client on a breakthrough call. And, her big concern that she kept bringing up was, she kept saying, I just don't know if this will work for me. She's like, I'm working 12 or more hours a day. I have all these other commitments going on. She volunteers with her church, and she's like, I just don't know where I'm going to fit a practice in. So in the middle of the call, we actually came up with this idea of time tithing, which it turns out other people have written about, but I swear it really came to me and to us in the middle of this call. So time tithing is it's kind of like the biblical concept of tithing that many of you are probably familiar with. In kind of classic tithing, you set aside 10% of your income to give to some form of charitable giving. So it could be to a religious organization or a church, or it could be to a charity that you find meaningful that serves the poor in your community, or just something that you believe in. So you do that at the beginning, right? You set that money aside as a tithe, as like your best, like, this is where I'm prioritizing it. And you do that even when you feel like your budget is tight, because for you, you've identified that it's a spiritual priority if you've done tithing. And then somehow you end up with enough money at the end of each month, which is kind of what this person said on our call. So time tithing it's like by putting that spiritual priority first, somehow it's like a universal law of the universe that God then takes care of the details. Now, interesting, once we kind of made that analogy and connection, because she had that experience of doing the tithing financially, and that things always seem to work out, and in some ways she even experienced more financial abundance when maybe she's even watching this video, because I know she's in our group here. But the same thing is true when you start to prioritize a daily centering practice, a practice of centering prayer or meditation. It's like you're declaring it, you're saying to God and to yourself and to anyone else who will listen that this is a spiritual priority, that it's a priority for you. And then, and only then, and this is key, then you start to find more time in your day. Now, let me give you a couple of other examples. One is from a few years ago that was a friend of mine. Her name is Birdie. She was a colleague that I was working with at the time. She had started doing a morning sitting meditation practice. She started setting aside, I think she started with 20 minutes. I think eventually it went up to 30 minutes. And she made this comment in a conversation where she said, you know, when I do my practice in the morning, it feels like I have more time in my day. Like her perception of time changed. And that is part of the key. So I think there's this sort of spiritual law that when you prioritize the practice, it gets done, you make room for it, all these other changes kind of flow from that. But there's something too about the kind of mental spiritual shift that happens is that when you change the way you show up in your day and you prioritize your spiritual practice, and ideally you find another time later in your day to do it again, to again make that commitment and prioritize it, you will actually change your relationship with time. And it's weird. It's just, it's happened to me too. There have been times where I haven't been as consistent in my practice. And when I get back to it, it's like somehow putting that priority first of connecting with God, of centering, of kind of letting go of the stress and anxiety before I get into my day. There's just, I have more time. The important things get done. Let me give you another example. Now, this is from a client who I just finished working with, actually, had very similar concerns. This person, a very busy C-suite executive, and didn't have a lot of time, was a little skeptical. So we worked together, learned the practice, which is simple and can be done in a couple hours. But then we really figured out, like, where are the best times in his day where he could start to gently kind of infuse the practice and then allow it to expand from there. So the easy one for him and for most people, honestly, is to start by doing it first thing in the morning. And for him, it was key that he had to do the practice before he gave himself permission to open his phone or start checking email or open his computer. Then we didn't start kind of whole hog, but we allowed the time and the practice to expand into longer periods of silence and practice as he got more comfortable with it. And then we also continued to explore other points that were later in his day where he could infuse a second practice. Again, not feeling like he had to do it perfectly right away, but just like, where can you get started? Now, the cool thing was, as we were finishing up our work together, I knew that the fruits were paying off. I mean, I already knew they were before, but the verification that we both got, the proof, as it were, came when he started talking about how he was coming home and even planning out with his wife. He would put his phone in a spot where it's like, if it rings and it's important, I can get it, but I don't need to be like walking around looking at it all the time and carrying my phone around. And he was doing that on nights and weekends. He even allowed himself to take a nap on a Saturday over the weekend. And by his own admission, that was just something he never would have done before, because the to-do task list in his head would have never allowed him the time to come down. Now, the interesting thing that's cool beyond the spiritual commitment is that it's also improved his eating and his exercise habits, so the way he's taking care of his health. It's improved his relationship with his wife because he's more present. He talked about how his wife had commented recently that he was listening more deeply when she was saying things to him, always a bonus. He had a couple of coworkers that were challenging that we had talked about, and he was finding that communication was flowing more easily, as well as having more time and energy just to be with his daughters, or even just to enjoy a walk with his dog in the evenings. And that's because he is now living aligned from his practice, right? So everything comes out of the practice. He's living with intention, focused on his true purpose. He identified that true north, like higher purpose, and which for him was enjoying and being present with the people that he loves. And so he's able to set those other things aside, still get his work done, but then enjoy those things. So now it's like things at work aren't stressing him as much as they used to. He's able to resolve problems quicker when he is at work and be more focused and productive. But then when they do come up, he's able to kind of let them go, or at the end of the day, kind of set them aside and come home and be present for the night and appreciate his family and his relationships. That to me is gold. I mean, when I just get giddy when I hear these stories of people who get into the practice and they start to see those fruits, because once you experience those fruits, then suddenly the worry about, do I have the time or can I make the time, becomes irrelevant because you know that it's an investment. It's a tithe that God is taking care of the details. And that to me is where centering for wisdom in action just becomes this really beautiful thing. And then to see him paying it forward, right? And the joy that his wife and his colleagues that he works with are all experiencing because of that. So this is the idea of time tithing. It's somewhat different from, I actually Googled this and realized that I didn't make this up. Other people have talked about time tithing, but they mostly talk about it in terms of like giving of your time, like volunteering, as opposed to giving money. And the analogy the metaphor we're using here is actually slightly different. It's setting aside those perfect, or well, perfect isn't the right word, the optimal times throughout your day to focus on saying yes to God and to saying yes to whatever is arising in your life, to doing the spiritual practice. That's the kind of time tithing we're talking about. And it really is this almost magical way to find more time in your day. Things feel less hectic and rushed. You still get the important things done on your checklist, and you worry less about the not so important things because the checklist is always going to be there. And then enjoy the rest of your time just being with your loved ones. So if this whole idea of time tithing, and if you've had that experience of like, I don't know if this could work or if I could actually pull this off, I just want to say you can, and I can help you. So I'm putting into the chat right now, and it's actually already in there as well, is the link to book a call with me. So that's the Thomas J. Bushlack /apply link that you can go and just set up a time, and we'll do this breakthrough call, and we'll get totally clear on where this could fit into your life and what it could do for you, kind of both short term and long term. So you can go straight there. If you want to learn a little bit more about how I approach this whole process, I have my free masterclass there as well. So you could go and watch that. It's a 45, both of them are 45 minutes. And if you watch the class, you'll have that option to book a call with me at the very end of it as well. So if doing this, kind of prioritizing, putting that time into your spiritual practice, into connecting with God or a higher power, however you understand that, to prioritizing your health, to getting focused and getting the things you need done in your career with less stress and less effort, and then being present to the people you love. If those four things sound good to you, and I don't know who wouldn't want that, but that's up to you. If those four things sound good to you, go ahead and just book that call right now, and we will figure this out, come up with a plan. If I can help you, I'll discuss that with you. And if I can't, I'll be totally honest with you too, and refer you to somebody or somewhere else who can. All right, so book that call. I will look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks you all, and have a great rest of your day.